This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to My Business Stars, a podcast series featuring conversations with disabled business owners telling their business stories. Hosted by the Disability Business Network. Kia ora, I'm that blind woman Julie Woods from the Disability Business Network, host of My Business Stars. And on today's episode, we have Frances Duncan, author, Austenite and life coach. Welcome, Frances.
Hello, Julie. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you on the program today. Now, you identify as neurodiverse. Can you explain to our listeners what that means to you?
My brain is wired differently than the majority of people will say. So there's like a neurotypical, neurodiverse. A neurotypical is typical, and neurodiverse are the fun ones. So to me, it means that my brain goes really fast and can overload with all the information, especially when it comes to sensory input.
Now, you are an author. Can you tell us about your books?
I rip off Jane Austen, basically. You can't do better than Jane Austen, so I'm not trying. I'm just going to steal her plots and her characters and put them in different situations, modern contexts, and have a good time doing so.
And you call yourself an Austenite. So for those of us who aren't fully aware of what that means, can you tell us?
Basically, I've been obsessed with Jane Austen for the past about 30 years. So some people who are very into Jane Austen will call themselves Janeites, and some people use the term Austenite. I just use Austenite, really. So a lot of what I do is based around Jane Austen. I founded and run the Jane Austen Society of Aotearoa New Zealand. We're in our 11th year this year. And I have a podcast about Jane Austen's novels, and obviously I write my own novels kind of based on her stuff. And I have some Austen-themed merch on like those sites where you put up the design and then they print it wherever is closest to you for distribution.
And what is it about Jane Austen that you like?
That is such a hard question. Oh, she's so funny. She's sarcastic, she's biting, she's smart. She's a woman railing against the confines of her society. She was writing revolutionary stuff 200 years ago, but in such a way that people were reading it and weren't getting offended. Like one of her really well-known characters, Elizabeth Bennet, we all think, she's a modern woman, she's great. But at the time, they're like, she's a bit pert, isn't she? She was sort of pushing the bounds of society. And I love that she was doing that. Like during that time, women weren't really allowed to have their own money and make their own money. And she did that.
Yes, well, that's a lot to like, isn't it? So it's her characters and their feistiness and...
Yeah.
Yeah. And so where does that meet life coach or life coaching? I
think because everything about my life is about Jane Austen is that it kind of seeps into my life coaching too. I had a client meeting this morning and we were talking about how certain characters, if you put them in a different situation, that then they behave differently, and then understanding that what that would mean for yourself, because you're not going to do the same thing in the situation as somebody else is. So you can't necessarily look and go, oh, this is getting very confusing. I said, Elizabeth Bennet, when she visits Lady Catherine, talks back to her. But if you have Catherine Morland from Northanger Abbey, if Jane Austen's first novel, which wasn't published till after she died, which is confusing, visiting Lady Catherine, she would not make a peep. And you can kind of use the example of how characters would behave to think about what works best for you as a person. And I'm just talking in circles at this point.
No, I get that. And it's kind of applying the characters of Jane Austen to our lives and who we might identify with, because I don't think we always think about that, and we just do things unconsciously or subconsciously. So to use them as a reference point can be useful.
Yeah, like who do you want to be? Do you want to be an Elizabeth Bennet? Do you want to be Charlotte Lucas?
Yeah.
These days you can look at Charlotte Lucas and go, actually, not a bad example. She did marry for money, which we do not necessarily suggest that people do, but she was making choices that work for her in the system that she was living in.
And often it's a coaching question, isn't it? You know, who do you want to be, or who inspires you, or who do you want to follow, or that kind of thing. So that's great. So what made you want to set up your own business?
I've never been able to work full-time because of my conditions. And you can survive on a part-time income as a contractor, but not as on a permanent or fixed-term part-time income. And contracts dried up a bit after COVID, really. Also, as a contractor, you have a lot more negotiating power. You're more able to stand up for yourself and say, these are the things that I need or want to be able to do my job well. And I could advocate for my needs and get those met in a way that I haven't been able to with businesses when talking about other types of roles.
Yeah, and the workplace can be a challenging place, can't it?
Yeah, it really can. I work best remotely, and we know since COVID that almost every job can be done remotely, but some people like to think that you need to be in an office. But you and I know this is not the case. We had a phone call and we had a great time, and I feel like we really know each other. And you can get those connections without having to be in the same room as somebody.
So the best thing about having your own business, I think you've probably already answered it, but what would you say it was?
Well, I love getting to follow my passions, do the things that I love to help other people do more of what they love. But it also means that I can be more myself. If I'm working in a corporate environment, I'll try to follow their rules and behave appropriately, etc. And at the moment, I have multicolored hair. Previously, I had one streak of a different color, but now I have many different colors in my hair, which I don't think I would have allowed myself if I were working for somebody else.
That sounds like a great sense of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about the challenges of having a business?
Putting yourself out there, trying to find clients, particularly in New Zealand where, tall poppy syndrome is a thing. We're taught not to toot our own horn. So marketing, advertising, those sort of things feel a bit uncomfortable because the way we've been culturally taught is that they're not good, but they are necessary.
Yeah, so is it around sales? How do you go with sales?
Yeah, that's the thing. Finding people to work with and I guess getting them to sign on to do the work with me.
To pay.
We do need money. That is true.
Yeah.
I do love doing what I do, and I'd still do it without the pay. But I do also need money to live on, and I do appreciate it when people pay me.
It can be an Achilles heel, can't it? In terms of asking for what you're worth or valuing yourself. And I know that it's a conversation that I have a lot with our disabled business owners. So it's a big thing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of your neurodiversity, what advantage do you think that brings you in your business?
Creativity. almost every creative person that I know is neurodiverse. We come up with different ideas, different ways of doing things. So for me, the creativity, I think, is mostly from my ADHD, and then my autism is streamlining and efficiency and finding easier ways to get things done. It also means I get super enthusiastic and focused on things and just get the job done. Um, I think also because the type of people that are attracted to working with me tend to be neurodiverse as well, I am on the lookout for what their needs are so that I can accommodate them. And that is a real strength because I've had to think about that for myself so then I can think about it for others.
Can you talk more about that ADHD and autistic? I like the way you described the two characteristics or the way in which you work with your autism and your ADHD, because how has that taken time to work out?
Do you mean to work out the diagnosis or to work out how to work with it?
Yeah, how to work with it, the time to how to work. Sounds like a big thing to work through.
Yes, but also I've always had them. So I've always been managing them, but unaware that that's what I was doing. So I have had to learn what my capacity is, so I don't do too much. I often fail at that, but I'm working on learning what my capacity is. Because the getting overexcited about things means I'll put a lot of my energy into the stuff that I love.
What would you tell someone who is neurodiverse if they were thinking about setting up a business?
Congratulations. I'm so excited for you. You're going to learn so much. And then I would go into, all right, then think about what things you struggle with and where you can outsource those things. So people with ADHD tend to be starters, not necessarily finishers. That's a huge generalization, probably offended some people right now. But it might be that they need someone else to do the other stuff, like the great being the front face of things. They might need somebody else to do the back end and all the admin and that. And you can still have a business and not have to do everything yourself. There are heaps of other little businesses that you can then hire. So everybody's getting work and you just work with what your strengths are. I mean, that's really what I talk with my coaching clients about, figuring out what their strengths are, what they love doing, and do that, and then figure out how to get support for the other bits.
Yeah, and you think about big business, they have divisions for these things that, we might not like to do. Finance isn't your thing. If you're a big business, you have a finance division. So I think we struggle with outsourcing as a concept, and I think we often struggle on and see ourselves as failures in that area and that we should be doing it better rather than letting it go and handing it over.
Yeah, we think small person business or one person business, they should do everything. But no, work to your strengths, outsource the other things. And I'm fantastic at admin and the financial stuff, but I still have an accountant. I think that making the space also for you to be able to focus on the bit of your business that only you can do is really important.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like I'm in a coaching session.
Oh, stop. I'm sorry.
No.
Because you're a coach yourself, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, I love it's you can get too close to your business, I think, when you're in it and not always see it objectively. So to hear you talk about it this way makes me, think differently as well, just hearing you talk. So thank you for that. And I'm sure our listeners are thinking the same thing. So you're listening to Frances Duncan share with us her wisdom around being a disabled business owner. In business, Frances, you don't do things on your own. We have relationships with other people, as you've just said, an accountant, for example. Is there anyone that you would like to thank for helping you in your business?
Slightly tangential to my business, actually. Marshall Tito at Access, who manage my disability funding, when I first met him, not only is he a delightful human being, um, he told me that I'm allowed to accept help and that I don't have to struggle. Just because I can do things doesn't mean I have to do them. Because I was trying to do things myself that I struggled very hard to do and would often put off longer than I should because it was hard for me. But because I could do those things, I thought that meant that I did not deserve the support. And he was like, life does not have to be hard. You deserve the support that you need to live your life. And that was huge.
Sounds like more freedom.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And what's your dream? What's your business dream?
Oh, I love the coaching, and I really want to help more neurodiverse people embrace who they are. We're the weird people, and that makes us awesome. Being normal is boring. But to really embrace who they are and figure out how they can do life in a way that works for them, because the rules that have been set up in society don't fit the way that we function, and that's okay. Finding your own path.
So what would an ideal world look like to Frances Duncan?
I mean, that is a very difficult question, Julie.
Just throwing it in there. I know you're up for it. I'm thinking about, we could say that an ideal world for Julie Woods would be everybody was blind, so everything would be available, or would be accessible. You know, there'd be print, there'd be braille, there'd be electronic, there'd be audio, all sorts of kind of different formats, there'd be wayfinding systems, that kind of stuff, I guess. And I'm not sure that a world full of blind people would be quite right either, and I don't think you're advocating for a world full of neurodiverse people, but then it's a continuum, isn't it, too? So we're all on that continuum as well. Well, I suppose that the question is around what would make your life easier as someone who's neurodiverse?
The options to have quiet spaces, whether that sound, visuals, so light, and busy spaces with lots of things going on. The options to have quiet, whether that, I know that some places do have quiet hours, but still when there are lots of people there, that can be quite difficult. I think there are a lot of people, you don't have to be neurodiverse to sometimes need that. Just like advocating for your needs means that there are going to be more audiobooks for people that can read visually but prefer to read audibly, and people that focus better reading while doing other things, and audio allows them to do that. If we consider one person's needs, we're actually making it easier for everyone.
That's right. Once we make the places and spaces accessible for disabled people, we make it accessible for the wider community.
Yeah.
And that would be the great place to live in.
We can hope it might happen.
Is awareness in anything in your business? Do you do neurodiverse awareness with does that ever come into your work?
No, because I deal with individuals rather than businesses.
So you're supporting them to change their lives?
Yeah.
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 Great. Well, We know that you do great work, and we thank you for coming on to My Business Stars. We've reached the end of our time together today. So if people want to get in contact with you, Frances, where would they do that or how?
My website is francesduncandoes.com because I do a lot of things as discussed. And on YouTube and Instagram, my name is Frances Duncan Does.
DOES?
Yes.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us on today's episode of My Business Stars. You're listening to Julie Woods, that blind woman, and Frances Duncan. Thank you, Frances, for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on this episode, and you are indeed a star.
Thanks for having me, Julie.
Thank you. The Disability Business Network is the only business network in Aotearoa, New Zealand, dedicated to business owners who live with an impairment. If you are disabled, own your own business, and would love to mix with people who look like you, then join us today at the Disability Business Network. You can find us at disabilitybusinessnetwork.org, or you can contact that blind woman, Julie Woods, on 021 913 513 or email julie@thatblindwoman.co.nz. At the Disability Business Network, we believe in disabled people being successful in their own businesses and becoming business stars.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.